Welcome to the UST Education recorded webinar series. This session is powered by US Transactions. UST is a boutique payment processing firm providing you with personalized service. We offer agnostic, best fit technology solutions for associations, nonprofits, and enterprise clients.
All right, well, let's get started. Welcome to today's session. I'm Molly Quast. I'm really excited to share how personalization is transforming member experiences. I hope you all are all staying warm. It sounds like we're cold all over the country, even here in New Orleans. I have a space heater on next to me. So maybe we can duke it out for who is the coldest today on this call. Before we dive in, I'll just briefly introduce myself. I'm Director of Growth and Strategy at Rasa.io. I've spent over 6 years supporting clients and driving innovation in the email space, specifically helping organizations transform their email strategy with AI and personalization. So at Rasa, we specialize in working with associations with that AI personalization, and I've had the privilege of seeing firsthand what works and what doesn't when it comes to email engagement. So a question just so I can help better understand the audience today, what best describes your role? Great. Looks like we have a lot of membership today. Some marketing events, education. I promise executives this will apply to us all. So to talk a little about the agenda today, first, we're just going to be talking about why personalization is now the baseline expectation. We'll jump into AI-powered personalization and what that means for associations and look at some real-world examples. And then we'll close out on how you can actually implement some of these things yourselves and measure and improve the ROI. I'll have plenty of time for questions, discussions, use cases at the end. So definitely feel free to use the chat throughout. I'll also have questions throughout, but we will have time to dig into anything deeper if there's anything that comes to mind for anyone. So let's talk about the reality of member expectations in 2026. Your members are not lowering expectations because you're an association. Their inboxes and attentions are crowded and they're being pulled in 1,000 directions, just like you. They're drowning in generic communications and experiences, and you all as associations are struggling with declining engagement, stagnant renewals, and the pressure to demonstrate value to members. So personalization isn't just a nice to have anymore, it's the new baseline for member expectations in 2026 and beyond. So most associations report that they either have flat or declining membership, that they're spending more on non-dues revenue than non-engaged members, and their members are comparing their experiences to consumer platforms that they're using day to day. So let's talk about why the generic approach fails today and will continue to fail, especially as things continue to evolve. So different member segments have vastly different needs. If you think about someone who's early career versus a seasoned professional, there are different wants, needs, interests there. Batch and blast emails from, marketing and communications are just going to get lost in crowded inboxes. The spray and pray method just does not work anymore. And, members just really feel disconnected when content doesn't speak to their specific situation or interest and isn't evolving with them in real time. So really the case for personalization is you're going to see, it improve in all areas. So increase engagement and participation, member retention, and it's going to be able to increase your non-dues revenue as well. So what do we mean, members mean by value? Value is not just more content. I think there was a phase where it was a lot of buildup of content. How much can we get in front of our members? And it was really quantity over quality. But today, value is better alignment. Personalization is how value shows up day to day for your members. So, what does that look like in practice? It is content that is tailored to career stage, interests, behavior. It's communication timing based on individual engagement patterns. It's relevant opportunities for them surfaced at the right moments. So, if value means relevance, timeliness, and effortlessness, how do you actually deliver that at scale? And this is really where AI becomes a secret weapon and comes into the equation. So another question I'd love to ask is, what is a personalized experience that you enjoy, whether it's, within your own association, whether it's a, consumer app you're using day to day. Um, I know for one, I love that Spotify gives me personalized playlists. I think they do a lot of repeating of songs. I think they need to improve some of that algorithm. Oh, apps with personalized rewards. And I think too, as you're thinking of, some of these experiences, what are experiences you may not even know are personalized for you? I know for sure there are websites that I go to, and the landing page that I see is probably not the same one that Riley sees, but I may not even know that it's personalized for me. Oh, I love end of year wrap ups too, Adrian. And the best personalized experience is truly a one-to-one recommendation I think that a friend makes for you. So that's a good one too. Lots of good examples here. All right, so now let's talk about the AI advantage in personalization. So, for associations, the use of AI in membership marketing is only growing. 31% of organizations are already in the process of implementing AI or are currently using AI in their membership marketing efforts. So, this isn't a future trend, it's happening right now. The organizations that are embracing, these tools and practices thoughtfully will have a significant advantage in creating more relevant and personalized experiences for their members. And let's talk about some uncomfortable truths and why manual personalization just doesn't work at scale. So, first off is time. Traditional segmentation requires hours of manual work per campaign. Most associations have rich member data but lack the time and resources to leverage it. And then on top of that, staff tends to burn out from trying to do more with less. Then, if we think about kind of the data problem, is most associations collect engagement data but don't integrate it into their tools and tech stack effectively. And then they lack regular feedback loops to understand what members actually want. So a lot of that data ends up sitting in silos across different systems and isn't really helping anyone. Um, and when someone has a generic experience or has kind of that baseline segmentation, it just shows that it wasn't meant for them specifically. And it signals that you as an organization don't understand them or value them as an individual member. And all of this leads to lower engagement, higher unsubscribe rates, and ultimately missed revenue opportunities. So if we think about kind of what traditional segmentation looks like, and I would say like our prehistoric personalization, it's asking who are they? We look at basic attributes like age, gender, job title, and just do groupings like that. It's often relying on data and feedback that you have to ask your members for, or that you can kind of just pull, on your own rather than learning from real-time behavioral data. But if we look at AI-powered segmentation, that's going to ask, what do they do? A behavioral approach is far more predictive of future actions. So, for example, instead of just knowing someone is a 35-year-old marketing manager, what the AI will know or can surface for you is that they typically open emails on Tuesday mornings, they prefer video content over text, and they're going to be 55% more likely to attend the upcoming webinar about the latest SEO practices based on their recent engagement patterns. So instead of guessing what your members want, you really can use AI to analyze those patterns in their behavior, their history, and engagement to predict the interests and needs and then adapt to the changing interests and needs as well. It's going to be able to dynamically change content for each recipient, whether that be what article to serve them in a newsletter or which session to recommend to them at the annual event. And it's going to be able to ensure that your members see what is most relevant to them. Using AI allows you to scale without complexity, so you have a personalized experience for all of your members. And this really works whether you have 100 members or 100,000 members. And, really the holy grail of personalization is making every member feel like you created something just for them without actually having to do it. That's the biggest benefit. So, using AI allows you to do those things and automatically customize a lot of that, whether it be a subject line, whether it's a CPE recommendation, whether it's a call to action button color, without your team having to spend hours and hours figuring that out. So, using, AI and these tools is going to result in interactions that feel handcrafted but can run automatically. So on a scale of 1 to 10, one being very and 10 being not at all, how apprehensive are you to bring AI into the personalization of the membership experience? I love it. People are ready. The scale is tipping this way. So before I jump into some specific tools, I do want to reiterate that you don't need to overhaul everything at once for personalization. You can start with one or two of these smaller tactics and really build from there. For example, smart subject line testing alone can increase open rates by 15 to 30%. Behavioral triggers like sending a follow-up email when someone abandons an event registration or from visiting a specific page can drive conversion rates up by 50% or more. So I think it's very overwhelming in today's landscape of all the tools and options there are out there to implement personalization and to use AI to do that. But I think one takeaway I'd recommend from today is just start small. Pick one thing to do it with or for and go from there. Um, you know, like I'm saying, you don't need any of these or all of these. It's starting with that one area where you have the biggest pain point or maybe the biggest lack of personalization. I'd say for most associations, email is the fastest win because it's typically where you're already communicating regularly with members and you have a really great opportunity to personalize. But as we'll talk about, there's a lot of different areas you can do this in. So, to talk a little bit more about Rasa itself, we are an AI-powered email platform that is designed to personalize content for each of your members, whether that content be in the form of a newsletter, an event campaign, one-to-one networking recommendations, really any form of email you can imagine. We know after being in this industry for almost 10 years now that, members don't want to be overwhelmed with more emails. They really don't. But what they do want is more relevant ones. And that's really where Rasa can help tune into that personalization and making it feel like a real connection for your audience. Another thing I'd like to point out is a lot of platforms and things that are probably already in your tech stack probably have AI components and personalization components already in them. So Agentforce is an AI solution from Salesforce. So it's powered by autonomous AI agents. It can be configured to complete tasks specific to your association. It can communicate with and assist members and provide personalized real-time support. So for example, Agentforce can provide a guided membership join and intake process. It will guide new members through complex processes like onboarding. It can personalize these journeys by directing agents to provide tailored advice based on new member profiles. It can ensure forms are accurate and complete. It can track onboarding process, and it can prompt the member to provide feedback at the end. For those of you using HubSpot, HubSpot marketing includes a lot of personalization components. One aspect is that you can create different versions of your content tailored to specific audiences without having to start from scratch each time. So you simply select whether you want to customize like a CTA, is it a headline, is it the entire page, create those versions, and then HubSpot does the heavy lifting. So I think a great question is, do you know if there are any capabilities in your current, I should say AI capabilities or personalization capabilities in your current tech stack? And bonus points if you share how you're already maybe using them. For those that are saying yes, do you mind sharing like which part of the tech stack has that, whether it's your AMS, if it's a CRM, if it's your LMS, or all the above? Jen, I like AI and Canva, ChatGPT and Copilot. Those are all great ways to utilize. Yeah, so I think I see a lot of unsures. I think a great thing, and we're going to talk about this more a little later, is um, across organizations understanding what maybe other departments are using, or even if you're not using the platforms directly, what capabilities are there, because you may be able to benefit from them. So I want to talk about some real ways we've seen the membership experience be personalized and talk about, what the challenge is and then what the personalization solution was. So, one organization I've talked really closely with has a membership base that consists of medical students, residents, fellows, early career, late career, and specialties. And I think even more than that, I think a lot of medical organizations have this challenge because of that widespread of membership base. But what they did to personalize their member experience. So, specialty specific content. They delivered highly relevant, niche specific research, policy updates, and advocacy alerts. And it came through different forms. Some of that was in a newsletter format, some of those were in email blasts. Um, but really making sure that the specific content is getting to the right person. I think one thing that we've seen is that's interesting is while you might think a resident wants a piece of content that, would be labeled as resident specific, maybe they are more interested in something that someone in late career is reading. So that is why that behavioral data is really helpful, because that can help identify versus kind of the, traditional segments you'd use to determine who gets what for onboarding and guidance. So, a welcome series for new members that highlight membership benefits that are specific to their current stage and interests. I think that's huge. I know organizations today have so many benefits for their members, but not all benefits apply to all members. So, really highlighting what is relevant for them from the start is going to help them see the value of their membership. And then networking and mentorship, connecting members with experienced professionals based on shared interests or specialties to aid in career progression. I think a lot of members are looking to their organizations for this. So, really optimizing it in a way that's going to match them with the right people is going to be key. And then another group that I've worked closely with, they have, 30,000 member plus base that is spread across 100 countries. So that's that's a different kind of challenge. But ways they were able to personalize the member experience. Real-time translation and summary. So they were using AI to translate educational materials, session transcripts, and communications into all the languages for member inclusivity. Personalized dashboards. I think this is such a big one. And I'm even learning more about this today. But, when someone logs into their portal, how can they see a tailored dashboard that highlights specific resources, events, networking opportunities, you name it, that are going to be relevant for them? And then I think, particularly when you're dealing with different time zones and different languages, the chat bots can really come in handy. So having a 24/7 chat bot, that can speak in different languages, that's there to answer questions, day or night, and at least point you in the right direction, even if it can't solve it, is really helpful as a whole. So, does anyone have a personalization success story they can share, big or small? Oh, Jordan, I love that. Targeted dues renewal campaign through Prop Fuel. I would love to learn more about that too. Adrian and Amanda, definitely soon. I think hopefully this webinar will be inspiring for those next steps so you can share your story the next time. I got to tell my friends at Prop Fuel they were getting a lot of shout outs today. All right. If anybody's still typing, we'll loop back to the success stories, but I'll keep moving along. So now that we've talked about, what's possible, what we've seen other people do, let's start talking about how you all can implement personalization, even if you're starting from scratch. So really looking at phase one, a lot of that is about auditing what you have. What current content do you have that can be recommended at a personal level? Is it content from the blog? Is it upcoming events? Is it journal articles? Is it career board listings? It's endless, I'm sure. And then what formats can you recommend these in? What types of emails? Are you sending newsletters with this content? Do you have web pages that you can personalize? Do you have an app you can push these into? What is already stood up and at your fingertips? And then from there, what data do you have on your members? I think one thing I like to really underscore here is like your data does not have to be perfect. Um, it's the starting point, so don't let that be something that holds you up. But are there places too you can learn more about your members that you aren't utilizing? Can you see engagement on the website that you're not pulling or tracking that you should be? Can you look to previous event registrations? Are there older surveys and forms you can look to start? The nice thing about getting started with this is you do just need the jumping off point, and then you can lean into the engagement data from there. And then after that is, pick some quick wins and set some baseline metrics. We all have to start somewhere. So, just picking a starting point is probably the hardest part, but once you do that, you are off to the races. So then going really into phase two, I think, is testing and refining. So depending on where you started and what the goal is, just keep working at it. What are the regular check-ins and the cadence of that? How are we measuring it? So for example, if you started sending pre-event emails with session recommendations, are you seeing registration numbers rise? If not, are the recommendations wrong? Is it the frequency of the emails? What other methods can you use? And I think another thing that I've alluded to is start to build internal buy-in across departments. One thing we see a lot at Ross is that only one department will be utilizing us as a tool in their stack that really everyone could benefit from and see ROI from. So I think, as you discover things are working for you in your department or for, specific objectives you have, share with others because it is likely that they are going to be able to benefit as well. And then phase three is really expanding that use. Once you've proven that success, where else can you take it? What other departments can use it? And then that's really where you'll start to be able to measure all of that ROI. And you need to measure it because I'm sure the C-suite and board will want to know. So I do want to touch on kind of just general implementation concerns, especially with personalization and AI, because they do come up. Like I said, there's a lot of concern, like our data isn't clean enough to use for personalization. So tools can work with imperfect data and they can improve it over time, and it still says something. Even if you get a member that says you got it wrong, you're going to be likely to learn from that engagement with them. There's often a lot of pushback that this just sounds too complex. It's too hard. We already have our systems. We don't need to personalize. Things are fine. But modern platforms really make personalization accessible to non-technical folks. And like I said, in smaller ways. Maybe it's not a full overhaul. Maybe it's just, a little snippet here and there. And you can start small. And then I think probably one of the bigger ones is what about privacy concerns? You can enhance personalization while still respecting privacy regulations. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later too. So choosing the right personalization tools, not all platforms are created equal. A lot of them do just use personalization or AI as buzzwords without real intelligence behind it. So what you want to look for are platforms that can demonstrate clear capabilities. And I think most importantly, you want to make sure you choose platforms that integrate well with your existing tech stack if they need to. You definitely don't want to create silos because of these personalization goals, and likely a lot of the tools you already have in front of you have personalization capabilities. And I think that's, when you're talking to vendors, just having very upfront and honest conversations because they should be able to tell you, how do they work together? If they don't, how do you still see benefits or if it's not the right fit? So just being very transparent and straightforward in those conversations. So measuring personalization success, I really wanted to focus today just on the business impact metrics. There's going to be tons of metrics you can measure with personalization. But first off, member retention rates, you should be able to really easily track engaged versus non-engaged members. And then non-dues revenue, sponsorship and advertising should increase because of increased engagement. You should be able to charge a higher dollar amount because you're seeing higher engagement there. Definitely increases in event registration and conversions there. Your resource utilization, downloads, course enrollments from emails that you're sending out, and then also time saved. Personalization should not be a time suck for the organization. It should be something that is actually saving you all time since you're not having to do so much of this by hand anymore. So why wait? You shouldn't wait. That's the point. We're at a tipping point where personalization is not just experimental, it's essential and it's expected. The technology is proven, tools are accessible, and member expectations have shifted permanently toward personalization. I'm sure it's just going to keep growing day by day, especially with the way AI continues to evolve. But every day you wait is a day, you're getting less engaged with your members. So the question isn't whether to adopt, it's just how quickly can you get moving. So, as you move forward in this journey, let's avoid some common pitfalls. One is over personalization. You don't want to use so much member data that it starts to feel creepy or invasive. You really want to focus on that value, not showing off everything you know about them. So there's definitely a fine line there. And then I think, another pitfall is putting that technology first. So, being so excited to get moving that you're going to buy an expensive tool before you really understand how it solves a member personalization need or want. So the solution there is really start with the strategy, then find the supporting tools. And then for best practices, is that privacy transparency. So really clearly communicate to members how you're using their data, who it belongs to, you know, how they can opt out if they don't want it used, and having those clearly stated for them and easily accessible to review. And that's really going to result in increased trust and engagement. And I can firsthand tell you, as long as you're transparent with it, most people will not want to opt out because you're going to give them a more valuable member experience. And then the other is to just test everything. Make sure the personalization is working the way you think it should. Especially if it's a new technology you're working with, or a process, you just want to make sure that it's appearing the way you think it should. And then some trends to watch with personalization. So I think first is predictive personalization. So really the AI or the tools predicting member needs before they actually articulate them to you. Definitely multi-channel personalization. So extending beyond email to web, mobile app, events, all those things. Real-time date, real-time adaption, so content adjusting based on time of day, current events, member behavior, and then the evolution with integration. So, personalization engines connecting with AMSs, LMSs, and event platforms as well. And then I think, really shifting to building a personalization culture. We want to move from broadcast to dialogue. So really move from talking at members to conversing with them, and having that be the baseline. And then having data-informed decision making. So using that engagement data to guide your strategic initiatives, really look for that, deeper layer on your members, where their interests are, how can that shape what you all are doing and producing for them. And then member-centric thinking, evaluating every initiative through, does this add value to each individual member? And then here are just five key takeaways before we get into questions. Member expectations have shifted, so personalization is now table stakes. That's just kind of the bottom line from today. AI, though, makes individual level personalization achievable, even with limited resources, whether that be, funds for it, staff for it, there's ways to work around that, and there's tools out there. Personalized digital experiences directly improve retention, engagement, and revenue. I can send you many case studies on this from different vendors in the space, where we've seen this. And the organizations that embrace this now are going to have a competitive advantage. The longer you wait, the further you are behind, and that's just more time you have to play catch up. So, start small, do it today though, because you're just going to keep building those blocks together. And now I've talked far too much. I want to thank you all for joining today, but I'd love to open this time to questions, talking about what you all are currently doing or wish you're doing, and just open it up to the group. I'm going to also put my email in the chat. So if anybody wants to connect after today, have a more in-depth conversation, talk about recommendations for a personalization use case, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Um, thank you, Daniel. There's a lot of information out there today on AI and personalization. Like I said, it can be overwhelming. So definitely, whether it's me or another trusted resource or a colleague who has experience with this, I think you should definitely workshop it with someone, talk through it, and that'll be helpful as well. Riley, that's a great question. I think the biggest misconception associations have about implementing AI-powered personalization is that it is big and scary and time consuming. It feels like it has to be on your strategic plan and you have to start on January 1 to have this huge project. And that's just not the case these days. The way that tools are out there, the way you can utilize tools to bring in personalization, whether that's using something like ChatGPT or looking for what's available in your AMS today. You really can start small. I think another great thing for organizations to do um, is I think that the misconception is it's all on them. Like, talk to your members. Where do they want to see personalization? Where do they think they could see that value? I think there's a dialogue that we see missing a lot between organizations and their members for some of that. So I think that's a good place to start is talking to your members through it before you get started on anything. That's a great question too. How long does it typically take to see measurable results from personalization initiatives? I mean, we say at Rasa, from the first send that you're using personalization, you're going to see results because the minute someone engages, you're getting data back on that member and you're improving the personalization in the future. I do think that depends on what initiative it is. So, if it's for event registrations, it might be that it's 3 months from the time you start your registration campaign to when the actual event is. Um, but I think, most cases you're going to see it in at least, 1 to 3 months, maybe 6 months if it's something a little bigger, and more complex, but I'd say 1 to 3 months max. Oh, that's a great question. In an innovative way, we've seen an association use AI personalization that surprised you. We just recently worked on a campaign for someone for their annual event. And not only did they use AI to recommend sessions per each attendee, they also used AI prompted text in those emails. So what would happen is essentially I would get my email for the event and say, "Hey Molly, here's the session that we think, you're going to find the most value from and interest." But then under that, there was like a long paragraph explanation of why I would find that session interesting, why it was recommended to me. And I thought that was a really great an innovative way of using AI personalization beyond just kind of like a content recommendation. Amy, that was Rasa did that campaign because I'm just closest to that. But I can give you some other examples of platforms as well. Not just we're not the only ones who can do it. There's a lot of ways to use that personalization. But the client was IAEE for their annual event. Think the biggest technical hurdle that associations face when implementing personalization, first is usually the data question. Where is the data? How do we utilize it? Is it good enough? And just kind of reconciling that. And then I think, you know, I guess is this technical, but is getting the buy-in, getting the buy-in from the IT team if they need to be involved, getting buy-in from other teams if they're going to benefit from it. I think that's really one of the bigger hurdles we see because usually there's one person who has a very clear vision of the goal that they have and how this can work for them. Um, and it's just got to be how can everybody else see that it works for them as well. And does it fit into the current tech stack? And if it doesn't, is that going to be an issue? And like I said, that's just a very like upfront conversation you have to have with vendors. Because everything doesn't have to integrate. You just want to make sure that you can access the data you need and nothing's, sitting siloed. That's a great question too. So personalizing for members who haven't engaged enough yet to reveal their preferences. So that's why you do typically want some type of baseline. Maybe it's from their member intake form. Maybe it's just historical data you have on them, what they have registered for or attended. Have they posted in the community? What have they posted about? Things like that. Because you should have somewhat of a baseline, even if they're not engaging right away. And then I think what you do too for those unengaged people is reach out to them. We see a lot of campaigns about reaching out to those who aren't engaging and saying, why aren't you engaging? Is this benefit something you're not interested in? Is there something you're not getting from it? And that's why you're not engaging. And that usually reveals a lot of great information as well. Oh, where is AI personalization headed in the next 2 to 3 years for associations? I think every association will be utilizing AI personalization. Um, I think it's going to be built into all of the tech stacks that you have today. So I think if your AMS does not have some of these capabilities, they are going to build them in. They're going to partner with someone who has it. They're going to refer you. It's going to be at your fingertips. And I think, honestly, the transparency between members and the organization doing the personalization is going to be much more close together. I think, members are going to want to be involved in how they're being, personalized too. And whether that is a page they can access to adjust some of those things. There's going to be more control beyond just that behavioral data. It's going to be them telling you as well. How do you demonstrate that personalization is worth the investment when budgets are already stretched? I think that, you know, at the core of organizations is member value and member retention. So demonstrating how it is going to impact those things or if there's an opportunity, a big one we see is like non-dues revenue and being able to increase that with personalization. Um, you can typically run models that say, if we do this investment, this is what we're going to get returned. And not only is it going to pay for the investment, but it's going to return in all of these ways. I think also looking around at your peers and their personalization experiences. We know an organization that did a ton of personalization around their annual event this year, and the numbers were just honestly kind of mind-blowing from how it had changed the year before. So I think looking to other organizations, your peers, asking them what's worked for them and seeing that it has panned out, will show you that it is worth the investment. Don't just take your vendor's word for it. I think asking how the personalization actually works, what's personalizing, is there a model behind it? Is it built in-house? Like, for example, we have our own RASA personalization engine, but some other vendors might be utilizing like a GPT or you know, you name it, it's out there. So actually asking how the personalization happens, I think is really important. I think asking what your controls are, one thing we see personally is someone say, I still need to see all the content that could be recommended for an email. You should be able to see that. So making sure you have the appropriate tools for kind of editorial review, and fitting into your procedure and process. Um, I think asking them also what's on their roadmap, what's coming up in the future, because most places are not just going to be one thing anymore. There's probably more that they're building to with AI personalization. And then, like I've said, ask how it works with what you already have. Is it replacing something? Is it benefiting something? Is it, working in tandem with something that's already in your ecosystem, and just having that conversation. And which departments can benefit from it, because it's oftentimes that, marketing might uncover something, but the events and meetings team would use it as well. How frequently should associations review and refresh their personalization algorithms? That is a good question. I think that is very case by case, honestly, and depends on what you're using and personalizing. For us with clients, we usually do a quarterly check-in. So I think that's a great frequency to start at. And then if you feel like you need to increase or decrease it over time because of how things are performing, that should get you a good baseline. But definitely be measuring everything, because if you're not measuring it, you don't know how it's changing. Early warning signs that personalization isn't working or needs to be modified. I think if engagement is stagnant or decreases, so like specifically with email, if your opens and clicks are declining, that's a major red flag, and something that needs to be modified. And, what I'd say there too is it may not be that the personalization isn't working. There may be another component. Maybe you're having an issue with your email deliverability. So always kind of like uncover all the stones, because it may not be what you think it is. It might be another piece of the puzzle that hasn't come together. And I think if you're getting feedback from your members and they're saying, why are you sending me this? This isn't relevant to me. I think you should be doing surveys that say, hey, are you enjoying XYZ? Is it relevant to you? And that gives you an indicator too. Um, because a lot of times people will just stay radio silent. And not tell you that something's not working unless you ask. Thank you, Jenna. Anybody have any other burning questions while we're still alive and together? I appreciate everyone's feedback in the chat today. That is helpful for me to continue to evolve this session, and make it even more helpful in the future.
All right, well, we have one last question on our side for you, and that is going to be, what is your most important takeaway from today's webinar? So I'm going to go ahead and encourage everybody to put their answers into chat. This will be your last question for credit. I like Kelly's answer, just getting started, even if it's a small step. All right. So as you were putting those answers into chat, there is going to be two QR codes on the screen. One on the left is going to be for any upcoming events that you can RSVP for. And on the right will be our media library where you can watch previously recorded webinars. And just as a reminder that you will receive a follow-up email from me after this webinar, most likely tomorrow. And it'll have a link to the media library where you can rewatch this and get even more insights. And I hope everybody enjoyed. And thank you again, Molly.
Yeah, thank you. It's a fun session to do today. And everyone stay warm.
Yes, stay warm.